is somebody in the house who will skip a meal so that others in that house can eat. Usually we're talking many times about a woman, a single woman with kids, and she will skip a meal in order for her kids to be able to have 3 meals a day. She'll only have 2. So this is not uncommon. How can this be in a country where we have so much food? How can it be where we have so many resources, and now we have all these houses that are empty out there? How can it be they're tearing down these houses? Why don't we have people in those houses? Why don't we put them in? There is no explanation aside from that the economy is designed not to satisfy people's needs. It's designed to satisfy the needs to make profit of people who have money. It's called greed. Yes, that it definitely is. Anything else about the? I mean, there's so much about the environment. This is a very pressing issue. It is, I think, one that I've only seen a few signs at the Occupy movement, but one of them was certainly a good one that deals with the environment. But one said, and I'm sure the quote came from someone else, this woman was carrying a sign that she had made, infinite growth is not possible on a finite planet. And that is certainly the case. And we are in the process of destroying the planet. We're in the process of making the planet very difficult for people to live in. The effects are already being felt in parts of the Mekong Delta in Vietnam because of seawater rise. The level of the sea is coming up now, and you have intrusion of salt water into the rice paddy areas. You have people displaced because of these huge floods that they've had in Pakistan. You've had many, many different environmental problems. I visited Bolivia twice last year, and the mountain glaciers are melting as they are in the Himalayas, and those are basically their reservoirs. They store water during the colder season and release water gently during the drier and warmer season, and so you have communities that are actually starting to run out of water for irrigation, for crops, and actually for drinking water. So this whole issue of climate change is not something for the far future. It's happening right now, and it's having effects. I visited, what's that?
Colorado River and Reed Lake.
Yes.
Are great examples of the long-term drought.
Absolutely, long-term droughts in the southeast. And when I was in Bolivia at the Climate Change Conference in April 2010, there were many people represented from the United States from different climate justice movements, Native American movements, and there was a fellow there from the Intertribal Council of Alaska, and he told about himself helping to move a village that had to move inland because of sea level rise and the melting of the permafrost. I said, you actually helped to do it yourself? He says, yeah. He said, we got a bunch of people together and we moved the whole village because they couldn't stay there any longer. It was just turning into mud, and it was, and the whole thing was sinking because the permanent frozen ground was not permanently frozen anymore. So these are issues that are actually happening right now. This is not for the far future. Rice yields declining in Asia because of high nighttime temperatures. Corn yields declining in Africa because of high temperatures. So climate change is not an issue to think about, oh, this may happen in 10, 20, 30 years. Yes, it's going to get worse, but the effects are already being felt. And of course, they're much, much worse for the poorer people living in the poorer countries of the world. Anything else? Yeah.
Can you talk about the military-industrial complex as a tool for propping up capitalism?
The military-industrial complex is as a tool for propping up capitalism. Yes, it's definitely one of the more important tools that is used. It's what are we doing in the Middle East? As somebody said, if they grew carrots, in Iraq, and they had no oil, there would have never been a war in Iraq, right? I mean, there's only you can't. There's no way to conceive of that war without the geostrategic importance of the Middle East and of Iraq in particular. And it's not just oil, it's the gas and it's the pipelines that might go through it. Afghanistan also, it's the same issue. So yes, I mean, the spending on military has been a very important part of keeping our economy going. And a part of the imperial strategy has been to try to control key resources around the world. And one of those key resources, of course, is oil. and that has been, basically one of the major moving forces of the U.S. policy since after World War II, really. And we overthrew the president of Iran and installed the Shah, and the British oil companies were more or less supplanted by American oil companies in Iran after that happened in 1956, if I'm not mistaken, or 54, in the mid-50s. Anything else?
Over here, Fred.
Yeah.
You want me to use the mic?
Either way. Yeah.
Sir, since you have this strong background in agriculture, I'd like to ask you about one of our favorite companies, Monsanto. You probably have known people who work in Monsanto, or you probably know a hell of a lot more about it than many of us do. How is it possible for people who have some modicum of intelligence and who know something about agriculture themselves to do things that are, frankly, screwing all of us?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I happen not to know anyone who worked at Monsanto, but that's an example. Here you have, what are these guys doing? There are many people who believe that these seeds that Monsanto and these other genetic companies are producing, that these seeds actually increase yields or somehow have some benefits for people. They don't. The whole purpose of what these guys have done, I'm talking about Monsanto, has been to produce, basically, what are they in it for? They're in it to make money. So what are the good points of these seeds? The good points of the BT corn and the BT cotton and the Roundup Ready soybeans and corn, etc. These are resistant to herbicides, so you can pour on this particular herbicide, or they resist bugs. The whole point of these is basically to simplify the agricultural system. Why are farmers buying these seeds? Because it allows them to farm on larger acreage in a more simplified system than they would have to do otherwise. So Monsanto is able to sell the seeds not because the farmers are getting better yields, but because the farmers are able to simplify the system, makes it easier for them, and they can farm larger acreages. So it's all based on a profit issue. There is no particular need for these whatsoever. As a matter of fact, you get into trouble using them. There are major problems with weeds that have become resistant to Roundup. And so what Monsanto says is, well, you farmers, you guys just didn't do it right, and in 5 years we're going to have a new variety for you, which is going to be resistant to another herbicide, and you can buy that other herbicide. So it's a lousy technology the way it's being used, and I can't speak for the people who are actually developing it, because I don't know them. I'm sure there's some way that they justify it, that they're doing something to help agriculture. But what they're really helping is a tremendous, tremendous profit-making center that these genetic seeds have become for the Monsantos of the world, of which there are only 3 or 4. Anything else about, yeah?
Another agriculture question.
Yes.
I've been hearing talk at the United Nations that one of the ways we're going to feed the burgeoning population of this planet is by more efficiency in food production and food delivery, like 40% more efficiency, so we're not going to waste any food, and that's going to make a difference. But in light of what you're saying about profit motive, which is already in place, I'm just wondering if you can reflect with me about where you see waste that would stop happening so that more people would get to eat, or just more about the agricultural necessities of food for people, not profit.
Well, there's tremendous amount of waste that occurs. If you're interested, by the way, there's a book that myself and Brian Tokar, many of you may know Brian, an environmentalist and from Vermont, we edited a book called Agriculture and Food in Crisis. It's also a monthly review press book. It came out almost a year ago. And basically, there's enough food right now being produced to feed everybody in the world, not just in the United States. That includes Haiti, that includes Africa, it includes, India, etc., where people are committing suicide on a regular basis, farmers because they've gone into debt. and people are literally starving. So right now there's plenty of food being produced. What's the problem? One of the problems is some of that is being diverted to other uses than food, because basically, poor people, in order to have effective demand, what economists call effective demand means you got money. If you got money, you got effective demand. Poor people don't have effective demand. Do they have a need for food? Of course they have a need for food, but they don't have the money to buy it on the market. If you're poor enough, you don't. And so what happens is potential food gets diverted into other uses. 40% of the corn crop in the United States is used to produce ethanol, which is absolutely ridiculous. You're getting, David Pimentel at Cornell estimates, you're getting no new net energy out of it, that there's more energy going in to produce the ethanol than you're actually getting out. But even if there's a small percentage gain, it's not much. And it's very polluting to make the ethanol. It's energy intensive to make the ethanol. So you got 40% going that way. You have a huge percentage going to feed animals that should not be eating the corn. And I'm talking about cows. Cows, evolutionary wise, cows grew up, if you will, over evolutionary time, feeding on grass. And they have rumens that can take grass and digest the cellulose, convert that into energy. We can't do that, okay? Pigs can't do that either, but cows can do that. So why do they have feedlots where they're stuffing these cows with corn and soybeans? It's to try to get them to grow faster. They're also giving them hormones and antibiotics. So food is being diverted into other sources, and there's and to other ways it's going. And the biofuels area is now taking a lot. And it's not just the corn for ethanol. In Southeast Asia, it's also palm oil and soy oil, which is going in to make biodiesel for the European market. Here, basically the biofuels that have been produced have been mainly ethanol in the United States. This is for cars. But in Europe, it's been mainly biodiesel, which is produced from the oil crops. And so you have this. This is part of the reason why the prices of these foods have gone up so dramatically. So I don't know if I've answered your question. There's enough food right now to feed everybody. We're still wasting a lot of food. A lot of food gets spoiled. People throw out food, etc. So there is waste that goes on in the system itself. But even accounting for that waste, there's still plenty of food that could be feeding people if we didn't feed it to cows that don't need it, and if we didn't feed it to cars that don't need it, and that you're actually doing damage to the environment in producing it. So, now what's going to happen when there's 9 billion people? That's the question. Can we feed 9 billion people in an environmentally sound way? Yes, I think we definitely can. I think it is possible. I think we can do it with sustainable agriculture, even with organic agriculture, where you can get very high yields once you know how to do it. And so the main purpose of highly mechanized agriculture and the main purpose of these seeds, these biotech seeds, is not to increase yields. These do not increase yields. What they increase is the amount of land one person can work, or the amount of food that can be produced by one person. In other words, per human labor hour, you can produce more if you're highly mechanized.
Take away jobs.
Of course, that's what's happening. And by the way, people are being pushed off the land in South America. They're being pushed off the land in Africa, by the way. Land is being taken away from villagers. There's stories about it almost every day in the paper. And companies are buying that land in order to produce food either for the United Arab Emirates or for Saudi Arabia or for biofuels. And so this is, it's a disgrace. I don't know what else to say. Yes?
Earlier when you were speaking about the example of Venezuela localizing political and financial decision-making,
Yeah.
As a response to the democratic deficit in national and international institutions, I was wondering, do you have any concern that local, smaller populations would have fewer resources to defend themselves against the local legislatures that might be incompetent or abusive? And would you see social advocacy networks as spreading and stepping up to defend them? And those instances? And what would you see as the role of national and international institutions moving forward?
Repeat the question, please.
Yeah. I'm not sure I could repeat the question, but can you?
So if local decisions are becoming more
Come on up. Yeah. Okay.
So your earlier comments were talking about the localization of decision-making in Venezuela as an example. Pardon me?
Right to your mouth.
Oh, sorry. You're spoken about the localization of political and financial decisions in Venezuela as an example and maybe a model moving forward. My concern personally with that is these local populations have fewer resources in defending themselves against incompetent or abusive legislatures. So would you see social advocacy networks as stepping in to fill that void? The void that currently is, I don't know, represented by national unity or something like that, if you believe in that? And what would you see as the role of national governments and institutions like the United Nations moving forward if decisions are more localized?
This, I guess, is going to have to be the last question. Since I got bumped from last night to tonight, there's a person that was going to speak, I guess, before 7, so we'll try to get him on. I think it's very difficult for local by themselves. For example, in this society right here, if you want to set up a small co-housing community, you can do that. Nobody's going to bother you if you got the money to do it, and you get the permits from your local city or whatever it is. But to do something like what they're doing in Venezuela, I think you need support. I mean, they can't do it. These are, many of them are very poor communities. And so they can get together and they can talk and they can make decisions. But somehow the resources have to be at their disposal. How do they get the resources? Where do they get the pipe from to put in a water line? Where do they get the cement from to build a school or a clinic? So I think what's needed, how it's going to come about, I can't tell you. Whether it's going to come about by a process like in Venezuela, where they're actually trying to build a new society within the midst of a capitalist society. Whether it's going to work or not, I have no idea. But they're doing some fascinating things. Or whether it really is going to mean that you have to completely really destroy the capitalist society before you can build up a new one. But it's interesting to have these models. So I think they do need to have some mechanism for defense or protection. But what they have there is they have a national government at this point which is protecting them. But what happens if Chavez gets voted out and somebody else gets voted in the coming election next year, 2012? That's going to be a real question. It's a really good question. Then I think they will try to mobilize, I would assume, the various communities and the various nonprofit organizations that are there for self-defense. Just as the peasants are doing, as land is being taken over from large landowners, peasants are being killed by vigilante groups that are organized by the large landowners, and they try to organize to defend themselves. So I don't see the UN playing a role in this. Personally, I just don't see it happening. I think basically you'll be very lucky if you can have a national government which is supportive. If you don't have a national government which is supportive, I think it's going to be tough. But I think there are things that still can be done and are being done in the United States. Even community gardens are something which is a step forward, to help low-income people to get access to food. There are things that can be done, but for transformation of what I'm talking about, I think it really needs to be done at a large level. But the community has to retain the power to make decisions that really affect their communities directly. Okay? I think we better quit at that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just to tell everybody, if you want to read more of Fred Magdoff's work, please check out Monthly Review at www.monthlyreview.org. Some little-known contributors have put in articles there, such as Albert Einstein, Che Guevara, and Jean-Paul Sartre. But Monthly Review is an independent socialist monthly, and you should check it out. Thank you. Let's give them a round of applause, please. I was being sarcastic with the little known.